And boom. We have to, we're setting ourselves online. Tú me avisas. En vivo. Please. Multi-streaming con Cuarto Naranja Crew. ¿Sabes qué? Le vamos a tener que cambiar el título, ¿no? Desde Restream o yo. Desde Restream, por favor. Alright, guys. Hi, how are you? We are finally online. Thank you for being here with us. Harish! Such a nice shirt, man. I gotta confess. Bro, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. This is the first time we actually do like a monthly meetup in a virtual manner. So I'm really thankful that you're doing this with us, and hopefully we're gonna be seeing it a lot more. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Alright, guys, let me introduce you to the man. The Harvard CEO. The guy that I met at GCC. My dear brother now in arms. Harvard. From Harvard. Harish Rao. Hi, Harish. Thank you for being here. Please tell us a bit about yourself. We would love to know a bit more about yourself. And we're receiving the first. The chat is active everywhere, and we're going to wait a bit for it to populate and to have more people online. But right now, just so you know, we use Restream to just broadcast the signal to Twitch, to our Twitch channel, which is twitch.com/. KaraOkulta. And we're in Facebook, we're in Periscope, which is Twitter, we're in YouTube, we're in Streamcast, like a bunch of other channels there. So we right now we're hitting about in between 16 to 21,000 people every day on a daily basis. I really don't know how much people is gonna reach the stream, but I really hope it reaches a lot of people because we're gonna have to start marketing it to English people, bro. Wow, we have a huge delay. Adriana Mendoza, thank you for sharing the stream. You're Harish, if you're gonna see it like Roberto Andrete, thank you for sharing the stream. Welcome, guys. Thank you for being over here.
Thank you.
And right now, what you can see in the center of the screen is just like the KOGamestudios.com page. We have like a wall there with all of the posts from the studio, and whoever actually posts something with a hashtag KaraOkulta or KO Game Studios, it's actually posted there on the television studio where we can see what you're saying about us and some of the news that we put out there about the industry. And today, I mean, Harish suggested a subject for the meetup that I thought was like super interesting, which is like IPs and designing IPs. I think we're going to talk about cross-cultural IPs because we're so passionate about it that I really want to hear you talk about it.
Absolutely.
All right, let's see how much people we got already. Harish, I think you should do a quick intro about yourself too, please, for the track record. And so whomever actually sees this after the live streaming, they can actually know what's your background and everything. If you could just give a bit for that, I would really appreciate it. And you know what? After that, tell the story of how we met, how we started working together, the challenges about it. It'd be awesome.
Okay, sure. No problem. My name is Harish Rao. I've been a producer in the industry for quite a while, probably longer than people have been born, maybe. I mean, I don't know. I think one of the games that I probably worked on is probably predates a lot of people that are on the stream. But I'm very proud of them. So if you've ever played games based on The Simpsons, on Buffy the Vampire Slayer, on Alien versus Predator, there's just a few properties that I've actually worked on. Um, what else can I say about it? Working on licensed properties is kind of my forte. And then the last several years, especially the last 10 years, been working on art outsourcing. Various studios across the world, specifically in India. And then what George was saying, as far as how did we meet, I think that Mexico has cornered the market on Jorge's. So there are like many Jorge's in Mexico, and I met a couple of them, and I actually met Jorge through another Jorge. So it's like, in America we have this thing called 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon. I think in Mexico you could probably get away with saying 6 degrees of Jorge, just Jorge, any Jorge. If you know Jorge, you'll be able to do anything in Mexico. I really believe that. So,
I appreciate that.
through a mutual friend, Jorge Morales, I actually met Jorge Suarez at GDC early this year. We clicked, same personalities, and then we really kind of hit it off. I mean, I gotta say, we had a lunch and that was okay, but it really didn't take off until like a day later when we had this amazing like ramen, like Japanese ramen like dinner. That sealed everything for me as far as I'm concerned. And when we did that, we became brothers in arms right away. So since that time, that was actually back in March of this year. We are now working together on various projects, and I'm really excited about KaraOkulta games and being able to kind of like work together, creating original content and outsourcing content. It's been just fantastic. It's been a great journey. It's only been a couple months old, but I got to say, it's been supremely rewarding so far, and I'm looking forward to the future.
Yeah, thank you for those words. We have now 10 people inside the stream. Thank you guys. Please remember to share. I really want Harish to see the power of Mexican people sharing, and obviously all my English speaking friends. Finally, this one is for you. And I hope we're gonna be doing this like much more much more frequently. And I didn't have a partner in arms that actually spoke great English, so thank you for this. Yeah, I mean, to me, it was amazing, man. And we just clicked, and I was so excited actually meeting you. And we met at a congregate party. I was going out because I was super tired every freaking day. And finally, that night, I went out, I met this guy. It was freaking awesome. He showed me a reel over there in his phone. And we just started talking, right? And we feel all this anxiety being, at a bar with people you don't know. And the only way you can actually just hit it off with someone is just like getting introduced with someone that's over there. There were the Colombian guys, the Argentinian guys, the freaking Mexicans over here. And there was this guy just in the middle of them. And Morales just told me, hey, you gotta be this guy, you gotta be part of this. That was the way it all went. And after that, everything just went great. Bernardo Garcia says, Snake, big boss, what's happening here? Hey dude, what's happening here? You're speaking with our executive producer. He's over there in the States, and he's talking, and he's gonna be just like talking to all our audience and telling the story on how we're gonna be working together. Bernardo, thank you for being here.
Yeah, and I just want to chime in here, and I didn't know this before because my entry into Mexico was through Baja California. And now that I know about Guadalajara, there's like this mafia war between Baja and Guadalajara. And I gotta say that like I gotta go down south because I'm actually from South India. So I'm actually more with the South Mexicans than the Northern Mexicans. So
tell us about Goa.
Oh well, Goa's on the west coast of India, so I'm a beach Indian, so I cannot live without a beach, without the actual ocean. I'm from two parts of India. One is west coast of India, which is Goa, and on the east coast, my father's side of my father's lineage is called Vishakhapatnam, which is on the very eastern coast of India, southeastern coast. So it's all about south, and it's all about being like being completely in camaraderie with my southern Mexicans, because I'm a Southern Indian. So there you go.
Yeah, that makes sense. And it's amazing. You tell me a bit of the story and where are you from? Where are your parents from? You're obviously lovely, yeah, because they're your roots. But you were born in the States, and the whole cross-cultural thing starts there, bro. I mean, you're American. You look like Indian. You're American somehow. Tell us a bit about that, because I thought it was like super funny when someone when you told me the story where someone just came over to you and they were expecting this Indian accent or something, and suddenly you spoke like perfect California accent. There's a bit of lag.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you. I'll tell you a funny story. When I was actually in Goa, and it was funny because I was actually there during like Christmas, New Year's. That's the big time that we actually have, and these dare I say white people, Americans, they walked up and they were just at that point like used to just talking to Indians, and they walked up to me without even knowing me, and they're like, "Excuse me, I don't know if you speak English or not," and I was just being really quiet. Like, I don't know if you speak English or not, but we're trying to get to this party, and I just like was just dead silent the whole time, and I was actually trying to make out like I was kind of like local, like I didn't know what they were saying, and then I finished. They finished speaking for like literally like 3 minutes. At the end of it, I literally say to them, "Yeah, check it out. You just have to go down this way and then make a left down here and then make a right." And they're like, "Oh my God, you speak English." I'm like, "Yeah, you should think about that next time before you actually make any judgments," which is hilarious. And they were just like dumbfounded. They couldn't even believe it. So.
And tell us, how did you get into the industry? What was like your first job and all that stuff? A bit about you. I mean, you have told a bit about your background, like the IT that you have worked in. But I mean, man, you got a great experience like working in many areas of creative industries. A lot of the people that actually see us and part of our audience, I mean, they are animators. Yes, they are game developers, like almost all of them. But there's like a bunch of students also who are thinking, fuck, should I really study this? Is it worth it? Oh my God, Mexico doesn't have like real studios that are successful, all that shit. So we're into that phase right now. So if you could tell them a bit about it, and maybe you have met some other Mexicans over there in the States, just give your honest opinion on whatever you think. Remember that here at KO Games we value authenticity. So throw some F-bombs in. I mean, fuck words, you're totally welcome. They're all used to hearing in Spanish. Just say fuck everything. So just be yourself.
No worries. I'll keep it censored version, right? So, how did I get into the industry? I played a lot of video games, right? So, there was no career. There's not really no career in this, is there? That's a big question. That's what everyone asks, right? When I was growing up, I played video games. I didn't have an idea, an inkling to actually make a career in video games. I didn't think about it, although I was very much into entertainment. I graduated a degree in fine arts, and then I kind of stumbled into my first job thanks to a couple of friends of mine. The same friends that I grew up, by the way, playing board games like D&D, Call of Cthulhu, role-playing games. We all were this small little clique, and we just made this natural jump into playing video games and then actually becoming game testers. So my first job was a video game tester, and I kind of stumbled into that, as I mentioned. And it's a game company you might have heard of here in Irvine, California, called Blizzard Entertainment.
And I think I have heard of them. I don't know.
You think you might have heard of them? Yeah, I think it's a small little company. And they were making a game called Diablo at the time, and I ended up getting on board to that team. And one of the things that stood out about our little group, we were a little clique of game testers, was I was really good at breaking games. I mean, it's a skill set that I have. I don't know why. And one of the things about being a video game tester is you play games most of your childhood, right? Like you play, and you get a job, and the first thing they ask you to do is to break the games. Well, it's a skill, but it's actually something that actually happens very very easily if you know how to like play games and you know how to find all the bugs. And I just happen to be really good at it. And you would
But
be like a
really
classic
good at it.
situation
Amazing.
where I would actually play one of the characters. At that time, nobody would play the rogue. She was the girl with the bow and arrow, the rogue character. And I'd get down, and then people would actually say in the company, they'd be like, "Hey, you're not supposed to use cheat codes to get down the lower levels." I'm like, "No, bitch, I am down the lower levels because I'm this good. Like, what the fuck are you guys doing?" Like, And I was one of the only people that was actually playing it. So then I get down there, and because I was only with a few testers actually testing with the rogue character, I'd be shooting everywhere, and I'd be finding bugs all over the place. And so you just get really good at it, and you have to become repetitive. And so one of the things, just kind of coming back to your question, Jorge, is that you really just need to kind of like get really good at your craft and then start to hone your craft, because understand that the video game industry, depending on where you want to get into, whether it's animation and production, you have to get started somewhere. So also know, I know in this day and age, in the millennial day and age, people are like hyper specialists, so I know things have changed a little bit. But I think being really good at your craft, honing your craft, and actually really being able to talk intelligently about whatever skill set that you bring to the table, and then start to develop those skills is going to be very, very important as you go along in your career. So be passionate, play games, do what you have to do, and if you have a specialization that you're interested in, design, UI, UX, um, art, animation, get really, really good. Look it up. Look at your competition. Look at other artists out there. Emulate them. Like, start to create your own portfolio of work and play lots of games. Play a lot of games. Like, you have to play so many games and get really good at them. And so that you'll actually have some vocabulary to talk about with people. And then you'll start all into opportunities.
Hey, Alexa Rivas says, "Hi there, it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Alexa, for being over. You're one of our top fans, always here. Now, you have heard about Harish before, now you're seeing the guy." Thank you for being here. I hear the audio slightly low. Please raise the volume a little.
Totally underwhelming, so,
Ah, you're a cool guy, man. Come on. All right, so you said a word that over here at the studio it's been kind of tricky, and you having supervised like outsourcing and being the owner also of a company that does outsourcing. I mean, what are your suggestions regarding the whole emulating thing? Because we have this phrase over here in the studio where we say that the best artists are the ones that have the best references and they emulate them. Don't copy, emulate them, grab them, copy, transform, combine, and then make your remix out of it. Well, and you have worked with a lot of artists, so what's your take on emulating? Tenemos un chingo de eco. Mhm. Can you hear me, Harish? Oh, I spoke.
Yeah. Okay, great. Sorry, there's a lot of echo, so I'm just waiting to hear all of you die down. Okay,
Sorry.
My my take on it is, have your go-tos, have your favorites. I have my all-time favorites, and in my all-time favorites, I always stick with, right? Yep, I can hear you. Can you hear me? Can you guys hear me?
Yes, I can. You're still there?
Okay. Yeah, I'm here. So here we go. So what I was saying is, in terms of emulation, first figure out who your actual go-tos are. Like for me, I'm a huge fan of Capcom art. Like anything that Capcom does, I'm all in, 100%. And everybody that actually has, their own versions of what they like, really start to build a reference point of that kind of portfolio of artwork that you really love and build upon that. I use different tool sets. I use things like Pinterest. I'll use Behance. I'll go in, I'll look at different artists. I'll look at different kinds of talent, but have certain things that you actually like. Like a lot of people don't realize that, when we talk about the term transmedia, which is thrown around a lot, transmedia is like being able to take, in my opinion, when it comes to gaming, is being able to take some of the things that you really love. Like, for example, I have a love of the movie Alien and the entire Alien franchise. So that means I love H.R. Giger and Giger's artwork. So I'll do a whole Pinterest like board of H.R. Giger and Giger's styles, right? And then I'll start to look at artists within that same kind of framework. And so being able to kind of have a language, a visual language in art is very important, so you can start to look at composition, you can start to look at the way things are actually composed, how artwork is actually put together. You look at different styles, and that'll actually help build up your comprehensive vocabulary from an artistic perspective. So I can't stress it enough, have favorites. A lot of people will say, like, well, be generalists, don't focus on anything. I say throw that out the window. Have your favorites. If they happen to be like 5 or 10 of them, if you have to have like 20 artists that you like, if you have to have like 20 brands that you like, fantastic. Make sure that you actually keep that as a reference for yourself, and then start to look at, borrow, like reference, look through like what is the best elements of these different kinds of artists and different kinds of brands, and add them into your potential portfolio as you go forward.
And then when some sort of tasks or job you need to be to just do, you just go back to that folder of references and try to grab from those, or you always grab some new ones depending on the task, right?
Yeah, it really depends on the task, but like that's why I keep like a very dynamic Pinterest board. Well, maybe I should actually show you my Pinterest board.
Yeah, you can go for it. I'm gonna make you big.
Let me see if I can pull this up here as we talk. I'm gonna share. I'm gonna share my actual screen here.
Cool. Get ready, Isra. He's gonna share something his screen. Let's hope he does.
All right. Here you go. So, if you see my screen, I talked about H.R. Giger. I didn't lie. Here it is. Like, it's all here. In my boards, you can kind of see. Like, I actually go in my boards and I create different kinds of subjects and themes: fine art, eccentricism, futurism, model sheets, concept art. I'm always adding dynamically into my Pinterest boards.
Mm-hmm. And do you have like your favorites or something?
Yeah, my eccentricism. This is kind of R-rated, so I apologize.
Go for it.
Eccentricism board. This is all my sexy content. This is all the content that I like that actually I come back to in terms of like, okay, if I'm going to do artwork because I'm a fine artist, and my reference points are going to be women for certain types of actual games or gaming or styles, I'll use this. But eccentricism is actually a thought between stuff that doesn't fit into one single category. It fits into different categories, right? So this is actually one of my favorite ones. I don't know if you see this. This is actually one of my favorite Pinterest pins. I have no idea what it's about, but it's like the best thing I've seen on Pinterest ever. It's like beluga whale that just kind of comes right at this beluga whale that just comes right back into the actual frame. So I just think it's a really great pin. So that's eccentricism. My fine art board here. These are some of the collection of my favorite fine artists. You can see the Giger stuff here. I have stuff from Leonardo da Vinci. Some Bansky's in here. I just have lots of people. This is one of my favorite artists, who I think everybody at home probably knows who this is, by Goya. I just, I like to collect things. Ironically, a lot of my favorite artists, my favorite fine artists, are actually Spanish and Mexican artists, which is actually kind of ironic. And so just showing you some of the different types of art. But, never limit yourself. If you've got different styles, if you've got different kinds of influences, things that really motivate you, I categorize them. Pinterest, like I said, is a great resource. This is my futurism. This is all the stuff I like, future styles, like concept art wise and like imagery wise. Again, you'll see stuff like from Tron. You'll see stuff like from the future.
Yeah, we hear you. So we just wanted to show off your Pinterest board.
I did. This is like my own like kind of self-indulgence. I never get to share off my Pinterest board, so here we go.
Cool.
You know, hopefully you guys like it.
Yeah, we do. Hey, dude, you have been an art director for a lot of things. So you really have experience with this. And you have developed some teams even in India and from scratch, right? You got to tell us about that and your process because we really want to go through this. Actually, you're going with your artist over here. You're going through it. So talk a bit about that. It would be interesting if you can.
Absolutely. Here's an example of one. This is something called Garuda. We're actually working on something called Quetzalcoatl Garuda, and this Garuda is actually an original artwork piece by Indian artists that I actually art directed. We don't have a lot of Garuda heroic imagery, and this is one of those heroic images of Garuda that we created from scratch. And it follows a whole process. And so what you see here in the background, what you see here with the whole makeup of Garuda, the muscular skeletal structure, the wings, everything else is actually done on purpose by design. Give me 1 second. Another thing that we did was some comic book pages. So this is a comic book page that was actually done with Indian artists that I worked on directly, a little prelude comic. But you can kind of see the detail work here. This is all done by Indian artists, by the way. And part of what I like to do is actually try to get the best out of the Indian artists that I can, who I'm working with. And this particular theme was around Thivastri. And Thivastri was the kind of scientist of the gods. And so this is a little prelude comic that actually works upon him and how he relates to the gods. You can kind of see some of the architecture, the detail work here. All this stuff is actually very intentional. I'm a perfectionist when it comes to art. So a lot of this work that you're seeing here took a while to get to this state, but it's what actually drives me as a outsourcing director or as an art director or as a creative producer.
Interesting.
As an example.
Do you have a preferred medium? I mean, I know it's super easy just to say games, but you have experience with comic books before. We're going to be doing some stickers and using some channels to Samsung, for example, to get Garuda out there. Or what are the plans for the IPs that you're working in right now? First of all, why IPs? I mean, because we have talked about this before. It's so interesting. Yes, we do together a lot of contract and service work, and we're passionate about it too. But we're going to be doing IPs, and I think the world needs to know your vision on IPs because I mean, we're business partners, we're partners, and I love you, man. And the world needs to know what needs to be done regarding IPs, even within these studios, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of my goals is cross-cultural content. You know, we're only starting to scratch the surface and seeing this in television. We're finally starting to get this in Hollywood. A lot of Netflix shows are starting to bring this out. But one of the things that we see is usually like, okay, there's a piece of Mexican content. There's a Mexican original series. There's an Indian original series. But what about cross-cultural content? What about a Mexican, Indian, cross-cultural kind of like really amazing IP that can be brought into the forefront? That's what really gets me kind of really excited. And so part of that is you have to have people and resources to be able to do that. And I've always felt really close to my Indian heritage. And one of the things, like, for example, that we're exploring is a Garuda Quetzalcoatl concept, bringing in like the mythological elements of Mexico with the mythological elements of India and bringing them together into like this whole kind of comic book original game kind of concept and content. And the only reason why I would say so is because why not? No one's actually doing it. And I love that idea of doing stuff where people haven't actually like entered into. It just means that it's just ripe content. It's ripe information that people sometimes don't know what they don't know until they actually see it. And so one of the things that I'm actually very passionate about is bringing that into the forefront so that we can actually start to make and we can collaborate with people that are experts in their field, and we can bring some various different talents together and start to put that onto the map, because we are getting into a world where everything is diverse. We have a diversity of inclusion now that's happening. Like there's no such thing as American anymore. American doesn't necessarily mean like what it used to mean 20, 30 years ago. It's a mishmash. It's a melting pot of different cultures coming together. And I'll just show you guys some of my artwork, just to give you an idea that I'm also an artist. So some of the stuff that I do as an artist, I'll bring up a couple of pieces here. So like, let's see, can I?
So small. There you go.
So this is the kind of work that I do. It looks very abstract, surrealistic, but it's actually not abstract. It's very much. There's a lot of reference imagery in there. There's a lot of bodies, trunks. There's elephants. There's all sorts of different things. This actually comes from my own background as an Indian, but I bring out the culture. The culture flows through me, and even though I'm a fine artist, I like to bring this into the array of gaming and graphic novels and transmedia content.
Nice.
I'll show you guys another one. So I don't do a lot of colors a lot of times, but this is an example of a painting that I've done. But again, bringing different elements together into a composition, like a painting like this is like more of a scene of like a full-on story more than anything else, right? And then I'll show you one more. Here's another one called Genocide Cafe. Again, a lot of reference.
Is it digital? What's the technique?
No, the medium is actually a pencil. These are all done in pencil. So my medium is actually like fine art and pencil.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not that I'm just an art producer or a creative director. I actually do artwork on my own. So I'm very much sensitive to content and composition and putting things together in place. So enough about me.
No, that's really cool. I mean, there's some stuff that I never had seen this before from you. All right, we got some questions. Let me see. Bernardo. We're here, and it's really nice to do it in English. I get tangled up with the languages. Sorry, it's okay, Bernardo. Alexa Riva said, I met a cartoonist before, and he told me that it's great to be inspired by other artists. Take the things that I love about them, about their art, and make my own style. It's really cool to hear the same thing coming from a professional. Huh. Kind of neat. Bernardo Garcia. Valeria. Hi, Valeria. Valeria Montserrat, welcome to the stream. A lot of people that love traditional art over here. Thank you for showing it off. All right, let's just keep it going. That's it.
Happy to do so.
Isra, shall we make Harish full screen again?
You want to make me?
We're gonna make it big. You'll do it this time. Next time, I promise I'll do it alone. Thank you. Make Harish big sounds like a terrible albur in Spanish, right? It's just, I'm just not gonna say it in English. It's terrible. You know what an albur is? Like a double meaning word? That's albur, just so you know. Okay, great. So, anything you really want to talk about? What are you passionate about right now? I know that you just said right now, like cross-cultural stuff. There's some cross-cultural stuff out there. We talk about the relevancy, for example, from Lienzos Bulaca, which was like really relevant, and some of the problems that we're talking about too. And there's this like a common group conscience or some weird shit over here that says that maybe we shouldn't do cultural stuff because it's very niche oriented. And that might limit your income or your revenue coming from that product. What are your thoughts regarding that?
Great. Yeah, absolutely. I actually think the exact opposite of that. I think the superpower that everybody has is actually in their own cultural content.
Boom.
The biggest problem you have right now is things get watered down because people don't know enough and they make up stuff. And I can tell you, like, especially in the Hollywood content, when I see stuff that's made up about Indian culture, I get so livid. And it just gets me more inspired to actually do it. So the superpower that everybody has, especially people watching this, is get into your Mexican culture and bring it out. Put it in your artwork. Put it all there. Like, literally, that is going to be some of the most powerful work that's going to be seen out there. And you're not going to have competition, because what ends up happening is people only know what they know. And for the longest time, especially in the entertainment industry, you see the same kind of generic content. I mean, I don't have to tell you, if you see any kind of Hollywood content, like especially this year, we started to see a lot of sequels, a lot of derivatives. Like now we have like the Matrix 4 just got announced. Not that I don't have any problem with it, but it's like, why are we talking about the Matrix 4? Why don't we talk about something beyond the Matrix? Why don't we talk about something that actually brings a lot more diversity? You know, one of the more recent, the Academy Award winning Into the Spider-Verse last year, is a great example of diversity using the Spider-Man license. All of a sudden now we have an African-American Spider-Man. We have a Japanese Spider-Man like version. You have all this coming together into a perfectly blended actual like, you know, movie that people would have said 5-10 years ago that you couldn't even do that, which is absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And what's funny is it gets the most attention, it gets an Academy Award, and it gets all the accolade. Now, what's changed? It's funny. It's like if you, I mean, I'm sure I'm talking as a kinsman here. It's like when people talk about Guillermo del Toro, Alfonso Cuarón, and Alejandro Inarritu, right? And people go like, "Oh, they're such great auteurs and everything else," and it's like, well, of course they are, because they're speaking from an authentic place. When Del Toro does something, Del Toro doesn't water down his message just because he has a Hollywood studio backing him. He's just bringing what he knows with a budget. Now, he's the greatest example of he's bigger than the studio system. Now he becomes a brand. So if you want to understand how powerful you are, look at your own three amigos as directors. They're fantastic. They are literally writing their own checks now in Hollywood. You know, Cuarón makes Roma, and he basically talks about on the circuit like he didn't want to answer to anybody, and he's finally in a position where he doesn't have to answer to anyone. So if you are actually passionate about what you want to tell, hone your craft, get your images ready, put it out there. Do not water it down. Do not think that you have to make something for someone else's benefit. Make it to your own authenticity, and then you'll actually get somewhere.
Wow.
That's what I really believe.
Do you think that should be done? Because when you're speaking about Guillermo del Toro and Cuarón and all those guys, those are huge now, right? So when you're an indie or where you're in the indie space and you can only spend like $75,000 just like us, right? You're working together with us in Headlings Arena. And do you think we should, even with really low budgets, we should plug in those cultural nuances over there? Yeah, it makes sense, right? I mean, it would be a differentiator.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. It doesn't matter like the budget or the whatever, right?
No, it doesn't. And I think that the only difference is that one of the things that needs to be done is creating good processes, creating good work ethics, creating good actual systematic ways of working. Those are things that you can actually borrow from the West. You can actually borrow these things from other studios that actually done a great job of doing that. But you don't water down or you don't alter your own content. You add your content into those processes. And if you actually have good processes married with great content and great passion and vision, that's when you actually have things that come out really well. It was only a few years ago, maybe a decade ago, less than a decade ago, that one of the first Del Toro films that came out that I actually thought was amazing, even though it was considered a low-budget film in Hollywood centers, was a movie called Mimic.
Mimic, yeah, I remember that.
Right? So if you look at Mimic, right, Mimic is a classic example of Del Toro trying to make a big-budget movie with no budget.
Right.
Literally with like a small budget. But he didn't compromise his vision. And so because of Mimic, Mimic becomes a stepping stone for his next actual films, and he starts to get recognition. Because what happened with Mimic was people looked at that, they took notice, and they said, "Wow, he did so much with such a limited budget. I wonder what would happen if we give him a bigger budget." He didn't compromise anything. He tried to do whatever he could within that budget, and I think it's important. Those are the lessons we have to learn. That it doesn't matter what our budget is. To really good work, and then the next step will happen. The next step will happen after that.
Yeah, it makes sense. And obviously, can you compare, or what would be the comparison? I mean, I don't know if you have made like feature films. I think your experience is much more oriented into games, right? So, do you think that it could be comparable somehow, or it's not at all? Because you have been like with producing teams, and you have worked with a lot of people that actually jump from film all the way to games, and from games all the way back to feature films, right? Or series, for example, animation. We have met a lot of people that's actually working in animation too, that's jumping into the game industry. What are your thoughts regarding that, or what do you think? I mean, it's all helpful, but I do believe that games just can include everything, and movies can't. I mean, I'm not saying one is better than the other; they're just different, right? But
yeah, I think there's a level playing field happening now. I mean, like right now, if you look at Pixar, there's a bunch of short films now that Pixar has actually been producing, and those short films are literally done with very small budgets, and they're all about diverse content.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have no limitations anymore, right? In gaming, the sky's the limit. Obviously, George knows really well that we met with back at GDC, back at actually E3 this year. We met with one of my colleagues, and Nintendo is doing a whole Nindies division, independent game studios that Nintendo is going after in different markets to actually discover new talent. So the point is that like you can do anything right now. There are so many opportunities. It's a matter of getting focused, getting a good process in place, and also making sure that you're bringing passionate content forward. But if you can marry these things together, you actually have a runway to actually get your games actually funded. Animation's the same way. There's no bars. There's no barriers. You can actually make things. You can actually do things that you couldn't do before. And now that you have distribution platforms out there, it's just the sky's the limit at the moment.
Let's just talk about the distribution platforms, right? Because I mean, we have talked about this before, and there's always like this challenge of actually balancing in between having a business and working with these distribution platforms to get your content out there, but also compromising your vision in order to get with those publishers or distribution channels. What are your thoughts regarding that? Because I mean, man, it's hard to publish stuff all by yourself, and 1,000, for example, on the mobile scene, you get 1,000 games uploaded on a daily basis. What are your thoughts regarding on how to just stand out in between that shit storm of games?
So my thought is never compromise your vision. Never, ever, 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 ever compromise your vision at all.
Boom.
Because if you compromise your vision, you will continue to go down a path of compromising your vision.
Right.
It's better for you to make an incomplete game or an incomplete animation and make it as good as you can, because you will get recognition. You will get noticed. But the minute that you start to sit there and say, like, okay, well, I can't get this done the quality, the way that I want it, so I'm going to go ahead and try to do as much as I can, spread it over like a longer period of time.
Right.
I'd rather take the short route. I'd rather have like a 5-minute piece of animation that shows off my best skills and put it out there, than doing a 15-minute piece of animation where it's like, this is not my best amount of skills, but I finished it.
Yeah.
And I think that distinction is very important, because you will get noticed for your best work more than you will be for completing the actual project.
Wow.
People will actually
that
give you
hits
money
my heart.
for what you need to get done, but never compromise on your vision and your skill set, ever, in my opinion.
Interesting. And what about the money? I mean, if we just do 5 minutes of animation of the best that we can do, if we run out of money, balancing that, it's so hard. You just hit my heart so hard.
I mean, look, you always have to be thinking about money and those kind of things, but if you got money to make 5 minutes of the best quality animation
Without killing your actual business.
without killing your business, do it as a side project, make sure you're not taking resources away. But if you set up a pipeline, you set up an actual like workflow and get that done and make it the best it can be,
Right.
you will actually be able to take it to conferences. You'll be able to take it to various people. You'll be able to show it to people, and they will take you seriously because they will look at the quality of what you put together. It's all about the quality. It's not about like the duration. It's not about like completion. Show off your best foot forward always, every single time.
Interesting. I love it. So, what's up next? I don't know how much we have been online. Wait, give me a second.
I'm just waiting on the delay that I hear on the echoes. So
yeah, sorry for that one. Guys, we're still online, right? Cool. Give me a second. Ta-da, 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 ta-da. Yes, we're still live. I don't know why. Sorry. My chat just locked out.
If anybody has any questions, I'd love to answer them.
Yeah. Questions, guy. Let me just ask them.
I'm doing all the talking. You don't want to hear from me. I want to hear from you guys. I want to hear from the people that actually have some really interesting questions, because that's the talent. I'm just the producer.
I'm just the producer. Did you actually end up as a producer because you know a bit of everything, but you're not good at actually executing one single thing? Because that happened to me. I mean, I'm pretty sure I ended up there. First of all, because I have like this business passion, and I'm really just passionate about actually putting something out there and getting a bit of money, just like karma, if you put something good out there in the world, it actually comes back. I do believe in that, and I'm pretty sure you do too. So, but I ended up just like trying to lead, and I'm not good at anything in the process. I mean, just like I'm not good at, I don't know how to just use Unity, I don't know how to program, I don't know how to illustrate, I don't know how to animate, but still, we have made hundreds of super hyper casual games, and we have made money out of it. And I see a lot of indie studios actually come over, a couple of guys, 3 guys actually joining up to just make a game. Sometimes they make the best game ever. They even win awards, and the year after, they're gone because we're not able to buy the ramen, So, oh geez, that has been... Wow, a lot of things. Helios Egilus, too much feedback. Yeah, we have a lot of echo. I guess we're gonna keep on doing this, bro, until we get it right for the audio, because you also have like a huge delay, right? Maybe Discord. Discord. Yes.
I have a ton of delay here, so yeah, I'm just waiting. Maybe a good thing would be like, if you have a question for me, just ask me a simple question, and I'll just, I'll wait, and then I'll answer.
Right. Well, the question, why being a producer? Why are you a producer and not something else in the value chain?
So for me personally, what happened was I kind of came up through testing, quality assurance, and then I got kind of going back to what I was saying before. What I ended up doing is I became really good at what I was doing as far as testing. I became very meticulous at it, and then I started seeing the different components, and I just naturally got promoted as a producer. And I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the idea of trying to get to a deadline. You have to figure out what it is that you really like doing. And one of the things I like doing is taking a project all the way through to completion. And I just love doing it so much that it's the one skill set that I kind of have refined. So for those people that are aspiring producers, or whatever vocation is in the gaming business or any business, what it is that you really like doing, and really start to like practice it and try to find opportunities to do it over and over again, because you will get better at it. and then you will find even more ways to refine it and actually make it better every single time. So that's kind of what I would say.
What's
As far
the
as like
most
why produce.
important skill to develop as a producer? Boom. Oh shit.
Communication.
That was an easy one, right?
Communication. Yeah, like listening, communicating, being able to. I mean, really, listening is the best tool that anybody has in any kind of vocation, I think. But I think as a producer, it's critical. If you want to be a good producer, you have to listen, you have to understand, and then you have to basically reflect.
Reflect? Oh, do make a reflection, a synthesis. Yep. And what's tell us like the worst experience ever that you have had and how you actually solved it, or if you didn't, how you let it die with honor.
Worst experience ever. Well, I won't go into any specifics here. I'll just say that as a producer, you're always going to be in a situation where you're in a no-win situation. Like, your game may be over budget, you're up against a deadline. The most important thing is to keep your cool and try to continuously find ways to like get it to the finish line. My experience has always been firefighting, and the one thing I'll say as a producer is you're the last line of defense, right? So if you lose it, then the whole project's going to just crumble. So you've got to find a way to just kind of keep it all together at some point. So we're constantly, like, the producers are always going to be the bad guys. We're always going to be the ones that say, hey, you know what? We got to cut back here. We have to cut down there. No one's really happy with the producer.
Yeah.
But the one thing that we are responsible for is the project. So if we lose sight of the goal of the project and the release of the project into the marketplace, then we haven't done our job as a producer. So a lot of times it's about trying to navigate, and again, that magic C word, communicate with your different stakeholders and make sure you get the project to completion and explain as best as you can to the different departments so that everyone understands why we're making decisions that we're making.
Yeah.
But a producer has to constantly be that backbone of the project and never lose sight of the final product and the vision, which is to get that product into the marketplace.
Right. The deadlines and scheduling. And obviously dealing with people, right? They speak a different language. Some of them are programmers, some of them are artists. They speak completely different languages, and it's hard for them to actually communicate sometimes, even for super simple things. We got a question here. It's from Daniel LP. Thank you for asking, Daniel. As a producer, how do you make sure to take the team in the right direction? That's a harsh one.
That's a great question. And the answer that I have to your question is you don't know how to take the team in the right direction. You never do.
You never do.
So
it's a complex problem. It's a moving target.
You will never have the word right should never be in your vocabulary as a producer. There is no right way of doing anything. And one of the biggest trappings that I'll just say I made as a young producer when I was first starting, was that like getting this idea that like, oh, I know how this is supposed to go. I had the right way to take us, and I failed miserably. So the problem here is you have to be able to work with your team. When the project has to ebb, you have to move in that direction. When it has to flow this way, you have to move in that direction. So you have to, as a producer, let go of this idea that like I'm in control and I know where I'm going, because those two things are absolutely 100% out of your control. So as long as you're always being flexible and being able to work with the demands and the project schedule of an actual project, you can work with the team. We can always work and communicate with your team as long as you bring humility to the table. And you have to constantly communicate to people that, hey, look, I have an idea, here's a thought, but I'm going to throw it out there as an actual thought and an idea for you. But not being able to come back to the team and say, here's where we're going to go, this is the right way of doing things, and this is the wrong way of doing things.
Right.
I guarantee you that's a recipe for disaster and failure.
You are.
That's your question, but hopefully it does.
Right. It does answer the question somehow. And the magic words, right? It's just like You know what? Just give me a second. Let me touch base with the expert somehow, and you bring him over and make them talk about it. I mean, we have done that like a gazillion times, maybe, right? I really don't know how to solve this, but just give me 1 second. Let me get back to you, and you just go figure out who's the fucking expert, and you bring him over. And all right, talk, guys. Fix this shit. Yeah, it's been kind of crazy. And what's next for us? I mean, we've been here talking for a while now, and obviously a lot of your experience. I'm trying to pick your brain here, but the truth is that what's exciting, it's what's ahead of us. And I don't know to what extent we can talk about this. I really want you to. I would love to have you here on a daily basis, speaking with me, and maybe we should make a show specifically about this, and telling the hurdles of what we're doing, and to the rest of the people who's there. Maybe just. Yeah, and maybe we try to we make this daily stream where we document on a daily basis what we're doing, but documenting what we're doing together with you over there, and now that we're partnering up to just get this cross-cultural IPs out there, what would you think that should be our first steps? And maybe we should tell everything. What are your thoughts about that?
Okay. Sorry, it's a lot of echo, so I'm just waiting for it to calm down.
Sorry.
No worries. Okay. Got it. So I won't go into too much detail right now, but what I will say is KO Games, we are going to try to make a lot of original cross-cultural content. So for those people that are out there that actually want to get involved, that are actually thinking about that and actually looking for an avenue, get in touch with George. And really, some of the stuff that we're planning, at least some of the goals I have for sure over the next several years, are going to be cross-cultural, bicultural content, really amazing stuff that we're starting to set up processes. And we're going to be working with various different distributors, publishers, distributors, but more importantly, making passionate, amazing content that really touches our heart. Like, I can just tell you from my perspective, Indian mythology, meeting with like H.P. Lovecraft and Cthulhu mythology and things like that, and Mexican mythology. I'm such a huge fan of Central American mythology. I could wax for you philosophically about like your amazing gods, because the pantheon of Central American mythologies are very much similar to the Indian mythology. When I look at like Quetzalcoatl and I look at Camatzots and a lot of these other like amazing Central American gods, I love them because that's the stuff that I grew up with in India, with Indian gods. It was very similar. So we're going to be doing a little bit of content like that. So that's a little bit of a window of what we're trying to do. I mean, look, if we could even do just a tenth of what the Del Toros and the Corons have done, that would be fantastic. And that's a huge bar. So let's put them on a different shelf. But I want to do stuff like that. I mean, that's the stuff that I'm really passionate about. And I'm really, really blessed to have actually found KO Games as an avenue to kind of collaborate. And this is just getting started. So the hope is over the next couple of years, we will build a factory, a machine of creating some amazing cross-cultural content.
Yep. That's what we're up. And we're going to be telling you about it, and hopefully we're going to be just like documenting how we got there, and we finally get the overnight success. You can go back to 600 episodes of how the fuck we did it in 10 years.
I hope so.
I really hope so. If not, buddy, we're gonna die happy because we finally did what we loved for our whole life. I'm pretty sure we can do that.
Absolutely.
Yep. Well, we got no more questions here. Anything else that you want to add? For how long? ¿Cuánto tiempo llevamos en línea, Pepo? Pepo?
This has been a pleasure. I really have enjoyed this.
It's really cool. And you know what else we should do? We should start showing off what we're doing together. Eventually, I mean, it would be amazing. You know, one thing that worries me a lot. Let's just keep on talking. We just in between you and me, just forget that there's a bunch of guys actually seeing us. You know what would be amazing? Just having the market actually speak about our freaking ideas, because you have some super hyper cool ideas. Your network is amazing, and you've been so kind to actually just like introduce us to them, and everything that we're working together, right? And I know that there's like a lot of secrecy sometimes in this industry, and it's actually just the other way around in the startup ecosystem. It's just like show everything to the world super early, the MVP and all that jazz. I'm really a believer much of that philosophy compared to the other one, because even if someone wanted to do Garuda and get and put them together in whatever kind of game or scenario or story we actually put together for them, I do believe that execution would be so different that it would be another thing. All right. Our producer says you've been here for an hour. Your hour is over, but I really want you to answer that. And actually, we can keep on speaking. I mean, it's not like we're paying air in a TV station or whatever. They're just fucking. I mean, we haven't spoken for so long. And you just came back from Japan, and maybe you should talk about that, because I mean, dude, talking about cross-cultural stuff, it's just amazing. It's India.
I'm not listening to everything. I'm sorry. It's so hard because it's such
a lot of echo.
so much echo happening.
All right, we'll use Discord for the next one. Actually, let's just do a lot of tryouts for this. Yeah. Oh, we got another question.
There's one question there. I'll just answer it, and then we can kind of maybe close up for today. So I'll answer Daniel's question I see in the chat.
Right.
Which is, I made little games. Now I'm working in a different kind of game with more narrative value. How different and harder is the production between casual games and narrative games? The answer to that question is it depends on the game. It really does. I mean, I don't think it's the genre of the game. It's more about what the complexities are in the casual game versus a narrative game. Because you can have a narrative game that's very simple, a side-scroller game, and a casual game that has a lot of complexities, depending on if you have mini maps, if you have different like elements and puzzle elements. So I think it's important to understand that every project has its own level of complexity, and I wouldn't worry too much about the interrelated differences between like a genre like a casual game versus a narrative game versus a platformer versus a third-person platformer, a first-person game, an MMOG. Like, they all have their own levels of complexity. It just really depends on what the thematic value and what the story is of that particular game. So, in terms of gaming production, it's important to understand what the end goal is of those games, depending on what format it is, and understanding the complexities within that game itself in order to be successful. So hopefully I'm answering your question, but I wouldn't worry too much about comparison. I would worry about, like, if I'm working on a specific game, how do I make that the best game possible? How do I bring the best value out of that game? If that makes sense.
I think it does. That's another way to make this streams together. Maybe we could just jump in, you and me, fill the blanks, but, like a question and answer kind of show. You make the questions, Harish gives an answer, or whatever. I can jump in, but I have less experience somehow. And some stuff. Awesome, buddy. Thank you for this hour. Thank you to everyone who's actually seeing us right now. My name is CorteSuarez.com. I'm the CEO of KOGameStudios.com. Our executive producer, owner of Harbic LLC.com. He's Harish Rao. You make the questions. We give the answers. Whatever. Let's just try that in format.
That's good.
At least with our experience, right, guys? There's a bunch of super cool guys out there just giving like awesome experiences and projects, putting them in the world, but they don't have strings to answer questions. Maybe we could do that, Harish. A single day for that. Wait, what that? Oh, besos en el Yo-yo.
Yo yo.
All right.
Alright,
Now they're
now
they're using double meaning words with me. Thank you, fuckers.
fuckers.
Take care, guys.
guys.
Thank you for being here, Harish. A big hug all the way home, and a big hug to the rest of your family. Thank you, clan. The clan we called our community clan. So thank you, clan. See you later. Bye bye.
See ya.